Good afternoon, everyone. So, kindly reminder that please close your mic during the presentation. So, welcome to our online lecture, and I hope everyone is doing well. So today, Masa proudly present to you the Malaysian Architecture Education online lecture series, and this is our 4th lecture so far. And thank you for joining us. So, Masa stands for Malaysia Architecture Student Alliance, and it is a non-profit student committee, and we acting directly under PAM, which is the Pertukaran Architect Malaysia. We consist of student representatives from all architecture institute in Malaysia, and during this time of MCO, MASA and PAM have decided to launch this online lecture series for students to be more productive and gain more insight. Architect Adrianta is the head of PAM Education, and Dr. 𝐻𝐫𝐢 is our convener. There will be more series coming up after this one, so do keep in touch with MASA Instagram and Facebook page. My name is 𝐿 𝐿𝐼, and I'm a MASA representative from UCSI University. I will be your MC for today. So I would like to welcome our guest for today, Architect Wooi Lok Kuang. He's a practicing architect in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and he's the principal of Wooi Architect, which he established at the end of year 1996. He was born in the northern region of Malaysia, where he spent his childhood among the traditional Malay village. The authentic and sustainable way of life in the village has actually influenced him to outlook in architecture. He spent 10 years in Sydney, Australia, and obtained a Bachelor of Architecture in year 1989. And subsequently, he also got a Master of Architecture in year 1990, and is from the University of New South Wales. Furthermore, he is also regularly involved in local university as guest speaker, reviewer, critic, and also external assessor. He was appointed as the professor at University Putra Malaysia from 2008 and it's to 2015. He enjoys the practice of architecture, which he sees as a pendulum that swings between thinking and doing. Architect Wooi Lok Kuang works were recognized by Malaysia Institute of Architects PAM and Architects Regional Council Asia, 𝐴𝐶, for architectural excellence, and also published locally and internationally. So I hope that everyone enjoy and relax. We'll have a Q&A section at the end of the talk, and if you have any question, feel free to type them down at the chat box so we can attend to them at the end of the sharing. Architect Wooi Lok Kuang, how are you?
Very good, excellent. Thank you for inviting me. You all can hear me all right? Am I sitting too far away from the mic?
Yeah, we can hear you. So I will pass the floor to you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now you can see on the screen already, right? The what do you call the slide? But first, let me congratulate MASA and PAM Education Committee. I think it is one of the most productive efforts in under MCO, especially to keep the mind of young architects, students, in touch with what's happening, and also hopefully, give you a bit of motivation for your study. Right? I know a lot of study has been going online, and this is just also one of them. Right? But today I want to talk to you is that the talk, as the topic say, in search of original idea in architecture. This come about because when Howie asked me, and I don't know what to talk to you about that is most useful and maybe relevant to you, right? So from what I get back, it's a very fundamental question about architecture, what architecture is all about. And when you want to come out with your own architecture, especially those in 3rd year, final thesis, and master degree thesis, like where do you source the idea? And just like what you read in the introduction there is that, like also what Vinci, thanks Vinci for a good introduction there, is that there is a gap that when we see I go to so many universities to as a reviewer and also examiner and all that, as recently as this year. Uh, uh, there is the recurring pattern. Like when you have a very good research, then suddenly when it comes to the final outcome, your proposal, right? Somehow there's a big gap in between what you research and what you do. And the telltale sign of that, the gap, is that you might be doing something on, local housing, affordable housing, and then all the sensitivity that you go in there, how people live, and blah 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 blah, and then we are all focused on that, and suddenly when the final outcome, it is something very bombastic architecture that don't show any context, and it's a very exciting shape, but it doesn't reflect what your sensitivity in the data, for example. It's just a very broad brush example, right? And mind you, it doesn't only happen during when you're a student. When you come to practice, you're going to struggle with a similar thing, right? So let's get on with it, right? Okay, I have to get used to it. The first, what do you call my first online lecture? So I'm as excited as all of you. So I think ultimately it boils down to our attitude towards architecture, right? If I were to ask you, I don't answer. I were to ask you, you can answer when you Q&A, right? What is architecture is all about? And I think I'm sure during your quiz, once in a while, you might come across some quiz panel, right? That the quiz panel that they will ask you, they will make a statement when they look at your architecture and then criticize you, and then they will finish with a sentence. This is what architecture is all about, right? I had it before, and then you should be skeptical. I don't blame you because architecture is so wide. But let's boil down to a few issues, right? And I noticed from like Howie's feedback about what the student want, and it seems that a lot of people are quite wondering. One of the questions is how vernacular architecture, can be conserved to have social thing, And other would say that how minimalist work or whatever, talking about styles, right? And then those shape or form that when you come out at the end of your thesis or at the end of your project, it's a lot of the time, it has certain things about style, right? And when you look at Zaha Hadid's work, you can't help but, this is Zaha Hadid parametric, or even his partner Patrick Schumacher, that's their style, So I'm not knocking style as it is necessarily a bad thing, because it definitely, why style become a style, it's just like why cliche become a cliche, right? Like for example, less is more or whatever. Because there's certain validity in what we see the world, or how people like, what they see in the world. Like minimalists maybe give them a sense of serenity, right? And then they want to repeat it. Whereas the vernacular, they will see that the cultural history as an important part of our life, therefore, right? So, you all definitely have seen those things that I keep looking to the right because that's why I see my slide. Is that the style, is it about style? Minimalist, modern or whatever. And so when you are confronted or when you're asked to inquire into your final thesis, do you refer to style, or do you conscious or unconsciously looking to style as a source of your solution, right? And I'm not saying right, wrong, indifferent or whatever, but ultimately I find that it's not very helpful, because you'll be like, somebody already created a pen, right? And then you just like to create a different pen, but it's still a pen, right? But I think then again, the next question you will see, like even during our time when I was trained as an architect, dinosaur time, like many more years ago, I won't tell you when, but you're talking about form follow function, right? I'm sure you all heard about that as well. That means a hospital should look like a hospital, right? And what do they mean? Because a hotel should look like a hotel because there's different rooms. So on the outside, you should see a lot of windows, or as an expression of things. And later part, when it comes to like now, right? It's form follow fancy, whatever you like, whatever you fancy. And now with the parametric BIM, you can come out with all sorts of forms. So you can come out with all those things. And then when you come out to practice, you work for a boss, and then you notice that the office seems to be like every time you go to the meeting, the client keep asking, you know, if they are like housing developer maybe, then they'll ask you, where can I cut costs, right? Never mind about these things that detail that you want too expensive. Maybe we change this, change that, right? So you have to build within the budget. So is it form follow finance, right? So these are to me something that preoccupied. But I propose to you that maybe we shouldn't, knowing all this, to be aware of all this is good, right? It's part of your education that you go through. That when you are exposed to these various architects' work and style or what have you. But I would say that I would want you to focus maybe, right? And then this, I hope you will challenge me in Q&A if you disagree. If I'm very open, then we can talk about this. It's more interactive, more fun. I think it is probably more beneficial to search for ideas if we understand what the task of architecture is. And this is, to me, is why it either create a gap or not creating a gap between what you research and what you do, what you think and what you do. Because if you see the task of architect, to me, I propose to you that the task of architecture is to make visible how the world touches us. Meaning world, meaning nature, that people, that touches us, different stage of our life, right? So for example, what it means is that then you see that you put an effort to make visible something that touches us from the world. Like let's say you imagine when you are young, go to the school, primary school and things like that. During my time, I hated the experience of going to the toilet, for example, in my primary school, because very dirty, smelly. And then I don't like to go to the canteen because they put it too close and things like that. But that's still a sort of, although building in architecture or whatever, but this is probably the architecture being manifested in a negative way to me. On the other hand, I love to go to that one, you know, there's a lot of light coming in, and then we can play basketball. The door can easily open, the wind can move in, and things like that. So it imprinted in my mind. Like that's how the world during that time of my growth as a human being, as a people, that you enjoy it. So if you see the task of architects, right, and then later when you grow bigger, then you get a job, you go to the hotel or whatever, right? Then you might find that actually a lot of time, yeah, you go to a very fanciful hotel, let's say in Bali or whatever. And then this second statement is that you're not going there to see just the work, but rather to see the world according to the work. Then you would actually see architecture as something that that you go to Bali, right? Then you enjoy how the room being open, and then you see in the valley between the hill or see out to the sea or something like that. So you experience that space with a different sort of building, with different sort of architecture that enrich your life in the way you see things, right? And now with MCO, right? You're forced to stay at home. I hope that, I don't know, you're probably like me. You'll probably experience your house in a different way, or even in your room in a different way, right? Because you are, if it's a good house to you, like a particular corner that you love so much, you probably would have a different awareness about what you have, right? So ultimately, I think the task of architecture is to actually reveal that to us. But to me, to summarize all this, I think the task of architecture, therefore, is the task of the architect to provide, right, the people how to reconnect to nature, right? To nature, right? Now especially with the climate change, and even with COVID-19, some people will speculate because of the climate change is actually make our environment so bad that it foster the widespread of viruses. Now, of course, it's anecdote, right? It's not evidence yet, right? But yeah, a few scientists speculate on that. And then also to me is that to connect to us to where we are, like we are in Malaysia. Malaysia is in Equatorial, we'll touch on it a bit later, right? So where we are, and then who we are as a group, as diverse as we are, different races or whatever, we are still very much enjoy pretty much the same thing, whether we like it or not, our weather, right? And then now, if you're talking about 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐻, right? I can tell you, I just came back from Langkawi. My experience of 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐻 quite different. This is, they give it to me is by 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐻 by, I don't know, Pak Mat or whatever, but 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐻 Basah, you know. 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐻 always identified just with the ethnic Chinese. But the 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐻 Basah take on a different take, right? But of course, when you talk about food, I can never stop. But my view is that there are a lot of richness, right? When we connect to our own culture with the diversity, that actually create a lot of richness, right? And a good architecture, in my view, would reconnect. The task is to reconnect us to who we are and where we are. Now, if that is your mind frame to set out every time of the project, right, then you would think of architecture not from the point of view of form, style, right, or even form follow function or whatever, but your central idea or central focus will be on the people. And then when you are talking about, later on I'll show you one of the student work and then one of the work that I quite enjoy by a very well-known architect, and then a few of my work, right, 5 of my work, but I will not go to detail in all of them, but I will go through my point that I try to put on to you, for you to consider that as a basis for you to search for a very strong idea, so that you can thread through the gap between your idea and to your final embodiment, right? But of course, in the school, your final embodiment will be your presentation, your representation of your skin, right? The drawing, model, or so on. So for me, as a practicing architect, it will be my work, right? So you can see for yourself, and if you have any question or any comment, please do, right? And quite welcome feedback. Now, so to me, if that mind frame that you have, so when you want to search for architectural idea, to me, it is something, yeah, you must have a theory, have a thought, thinking, or whatever, but it will come from three elements or 3 components. To me, the first one is a program or brief, right? Now, it depends on what year are you in, like first year, second year, or third year. Maybe second year you start to have brief, like the lecturer will give you a program, right? But if you're third year, the final year, you're slightly more freehand. You will probably pick a place, an area, maybe in Taiping, maybe, and then you're supposed to write your own program, like what you want to do there. But it's still probably quite guided. Probably you look at social, cultural, housing, or something, right? And whereas if you master, this is probably tougher for you, but it's more fun for you as well, because it's totally open. You have to choose what you want to do, because by that time you are expected to, after like 4 or 5 years into your education and with the training outside, you probably observe enough in what's happening in Malaysia, in your world, right? That you would have certain attitude, idea, or concept that you feel you can contribute in a way that people haven't seen it before. That's master. Like some original knowledge or some original input. But you make it very difficult, because you will have to choose your own program, and later on the second element, your site as well. Whereas, okay, it doesn't matter. But as a practicing architect, like for me, generally this is a given, right? But even it is when it is given, like for example, if the client comes to me with a stack of magazine, oh, this is the house I like, Mediterranean, I like this part, I like this colonial, a bit modern, a bit minimalist, a bit, right? So even that, I would have to definitely challenge them. Like, I would not, look at living hall, they need this big, this big. I would not go to that yet, but rather, it's more helpful to me. Like, I think when you're designing a, let's say, living, dining, and kitchen area, you're probably better to see it as a place where it's a point of gathering. And when you have a breakfast, you probably want to have some sunlight coming in. There's your imagination that starts at play, rather than you want to have a room 3 meter high, and then 4 by 5 meter wide or whatever. So it's not a physical thing. So my point is that either that, or even like, let's say, a school, the corridor, it shouldn't be conceived as just like for you to get from one point to all the classroom, or classroom for the student. But you think of it as a marketplace of idea, or social hub of the student. Immediately you will visualize the corridor is on, a lot of light coming in, large, spacious, or whatever. So it's your imagination will be triggered if you think of it as an event based, right, or human event, that's why I'm trying to write here, and a human activity or human condition, right, rather than a physical thing or physical need, right? That's the first point. But I would not elaborate too much on that. I just telling the organizer earlier, I actually wrote it down in 3 pages of notes that if you all like to contemplate on those points and you're interested, you can download it from my website maybe after tomorrow or whenever my son upload it on the website for me, right? Now, second component, I believe, is the site. Now, in the macro sense, I'm talking about Malaysia, right? And for me, I'm quite comfortable design in Sydney because I was in Sydney for 10 years, right? And my site can be in Sydney, right? But to me, I see architecture as a cultural practice. You not just design a building, but you design for the people. And when you say you design for the people, you actually have to understand the culture, which is the first part. Like I put it under program, right? The second part, I think the site, like for example, let's just talk about Malaysia. It's about the context, right? And the macro is a macro sense, I mean in a big sense. And in a smaller sense, you're talking about the topography. Sometimes I'm going to show you a house that I did on a hill. So it's either it's a hill or it's a flat site. And then where is it facing? And then where our sun coming from? In Malaysia, actually, our sun comes from everywhere, which I'm going to show you a chart in a short while. And also the character of the site, for example, we are looking at like things like, you know, you're giving a physical or legal site, you have boundary and things like that. It's limiting. It's very limited. It's limited. But in actual fact, when you're standing on the site actually is unlimited because you're looking out very, very far away, especially when you're on the slope. That's limitless. So you not only have to look at the relationship that's happening within the site, but actually without the site. So these two, and sometimes there are architects, what you call, I think there's a David Leatherbarrow, a scholar. I think the way he put it is very interesting when he talk about 𝐻𝐫𝐢𝐠𝐢𝐧𝐚 work. I think you can actually watch it in YouTube and things like that. He said when you survey the site, survey not physical survey, but you walk the site and you look at the environment, right? And then you look at the thing in a way that how you relate to the site. Like for example, it might be a big tree on the site, right? It can be just a tree. Or if the position of the tree is such a way that actually turn you when you walk into certain area, and then you have a canopy that can naturally become a roof. So when you do a house, probably you don't want a roof there. You want to enjoy the foliage, for example. So he said a lot of the time it can inaugurate or bring about a project. That means it's a very strong site with a very strong characteristic. So to me, this is another source where you will search an original architecture idea. Now, at this point, maybe I explained a little bit about what I mean by original. It doesn't mean that it comes from nowhere, because you cannot think without reference, like you all have to do a precedent study and things like that. It's because it's interrelated, that what people have done. You might come up with something that unprecedented, meaning it might be a building that never been done before. Like a lot of you might go into co-housing, co-working space, and what intergeneration housing, whatever. But what it means is origin. The word keyword is origin. Let me go back to the basic. It doesn't mean that you come up with something out of nothing. Right? So that is the site. The third one is the one that I find that it's a standard worry for a lot of architects. I went to many university, you know, where we do a examiner. So we will meet the student without the lecturer inside. I think some of you definitely experienced that, right? I did a few universities, Taylor, UPM, UPM, whatever. And then some of the question we get is very interesting. He said that, can we be more open or not? Like some other university, we don't have to worry about structure, right? We can come out with whatever shape we want. We don't have to worry about structure. But when they mean is that they want to create an enclosure that somehow they feel that all those columns are in the way, right? That break the aesthetic of the space. So if that being the case, I think then you probably understand architecture in the not in the helpful way. because structure, enclosure is very much, is tied with structure, material. Later on I will illustrate how that is very important. It's not separate, it's integral part. It helps your architecture. Now then, it actually ties into very medium of architecture. Like when you draw a watercolor, it's watercolor paint. Pencil drawing, right? But architecture, we are dealing with material, what we call space form and material form. That means the space, the void that we see. And then the material form, the things that you touch, like the brick wall, stone wall, or steel cladding or whatever, what have you. But form here, we are not just referring to shape. Just like we say form of government, right? It's organization, right? And then when you say somebody, you're making an informed decision. I mean, your decision is made that actually with the idea, right? So it means a configuration and all that. So I just quickly go through this idea of the space. Like space, for this one, I think it's probably the best passage that I come across it. Actually, space is something that you really, like if you, as an architect, but here to summarize the passage, you all can read it, but in a nutshell is that you just ask yourself whether when you go into a space that you will feel moved, and sometimes even cry in the space. I mean, maybe you find that a bit too much, but you feel like very powerful space, right? And then a little bit lesser type of analogy will be like when you go inside a court or a huge space, right? The space basically tell you, shh, don't talk, right? Whereas you go into a nice traditional Malay house, for example, you can touch the ceiling on top. The space is like almost want to hug you, right? So it's like our experience of space that it has its own way of communicating with us, right? The last time I used to go to Rumah Pak Ali, now it's burned down it used to be in Gombak, right? It has the space like that. So you can imagine when you're a young boy, you go to a certain part of the house, you put up your hand, you can actually touch the top of the ceiling. And that gives you the sense like you're in a 𝐾𝐫𝐢 house, you know, like a tree house that actually very intimate and very close to you, right? So this is what I mean. Like you are basically, when we walk through a space, this is the 6 direction that we have, right? It's actually front, back, left, and right. Then architecture is a bit like cinema as well. Except cinema, you know, cinematography, they actually bring you to frame, to force you to look at certain view, right? And then architecture also the same. Like you go through a space, suddenly you open up a beautiful space that you see and then say, right? But except the difference is that the autonomy is on the visitor. You can always go back. So there's certain temporality that tie with it. I mean, when you walk through a space, you still remember what you passed through, right? But it ties in with this 6 direction that you are going through. The other thing is that when you are going to any space, and mainly like you just imagine like a house, you have to unwind, right? And then you wind back until like MCO now, you do a corner that you can curl up and then, oh, this is my house, right? So you just imagine just like a quick analogy will be like, you're traveling on the airplane, now you cannot travel already. Let's say you're coming back from America, then people ask you, where's your house? Oh, Malaysia. They come to Malaysia in the airport, where's your house? Oh, KL. Then you go to KL already, where's your house? Oh, in Kepong. They go to Kepong in front of your house already, where's your house? Eventually you identify your house is the corner that you identify with. Now a good space, it is like that. It is like you can unwind and rewind back and then feel a sense of perfection that you can identify the space. And then another word that we architects like to use is called aesthetic. Is that when we are asked about what is aesthetic, we tend to say, oh, the aesthetic of this house not so good, you mean visually. But in fact, you want to understand the word very quickly is that when the doctor inject you with an aesthetic, it's basically knock you out of your senses, right? So basically, an aesthetic is the sense of sight. Sense of sight is very powerful, that you reach out, you want to see things immediately. So when you design this, your final outcome is quite natural. You want to have something bombastic, maybe attract the visual thing. The reviewer or the critic will love the shape or whatever, right? But there's only one aspect. So it's an architecture, right? From the outside, you might be attracted to it. But when you go in and experience it, I think the other one is sense of touch is probably more powerful, like in our climate. That you have a natural space that the wind can blow through, going through your skin. The skin is the most, what you call, biggest organ, right? External organ, right? Like you immediately feel a sense of touch. But of course, in the hot day, you feel very sticky. Also, it's the skin, right? And then sense of smell. Like for example, let's say you create a chocolate factory. It's very important. I recently involved in the design like that, which I'm going to show you at the end. Like we purposely have some pipe coming out from the inside of how they make the chocolate factory, so that the visitor can smell it. So the sense of smell. It's just like I go to my grandfather's place where it's a coffee factory. I go to Starbucks. What do you smell? Coffee, right? So that sense of aesthetic, it varied from the space, and then it has impact and more subtle impact on your overall design, right? Of course, when you present in your final outcome, you can only talk about that, right? Then I think the most key thing when you are trying to search for all these ideas, you have to have this attitude about architects, right? Regardless how bad things are or whatever, you must have a sense of hope and sense of wonder. And now you're in COVID-19, right? Now you just imagine, I know you're much younger than me. I'm an older man, right? So not that I'm smarter than you or whatever, but definitely I have a bigger, longer perspective than you. You might be very worried about COVID-19, but we have heard about AIDS. And then when I was primary school, 12, I had to do a poster on dengue. Dengue, I do today got treatment. It got treatment, but have cure. No, right? We live with it. We somehow we work around that, right? Not successfully or whatever, but it doesn't scare us from like 40 years ago, right? And then AIDS, for example, also no cure, right? So having said that, is that the mind frame that I'm not saying that you'll be a naive optimist, but you have to have a sense of wonder about things around you, either people, place, culture, different culture, and in Malaysia is the best, right? And look at our food. Can you do away without roti canai? Just recently I heard from a survey, the most popular Grab food #1 is what? Regardless you're ethnic Chinese or whatever, kadang dusun. Nasi lemak, Malaysia. Right? So there you go. We have to be appreciating of what we have, what we already have. And architects, and being an architect, is that you have to have that sense of wonder that keep you interested, right? About life generally, because architecture at the end of the day is about life. It's about how we what do you call, we see the human event, and then we create a background, a stage, or make things happen within that event. Now, this is, I won't talk too much about that, but basically, for the short of it is that we have to look at the familiar in a very strange way, and look at the strange thing in a very familiar way. And now the keyword now is they call the new normal, isn't it? Like social distancing, totally against our instinct, but we call it, we just throw in a new normal. But in this case, quite different. Like when I design the houses, I will not accept people saying that I want bedroom. I say, why must it be a room when you want to sleep? Yeah, you need privacy and things like that, right? So you go one back, right? So you re-examine a lot of these essential fixed belief or idea that we have about our tropical climate. And I find that will open up more interesting things that you can do, either for your student work or eventually as an architect. Now, and look at this, for example. Right? Something I find that is very interesting in a way that, and very this ambiguity in design, right? And you just imagine a bowl, right? And where does a bowl become like a laksa bowl? You know laksa bowl? When you eat laksa, you never eat like the first bowl. You eat Chinese prawn noodle, you might eat the bowl here, porridge. The containment is quite different, right? And then you become a plate. It's flat. It still contains something, but that one is for maybe mi mamak goreng, right? Is best for that. But when does a plate become a bowl? When the bowl become a plate? It's very interesting, isn't it? And in architecture, it's not much of a difference, you know? Like we can, like this is supposed to be a plan, right? Like you want to curve the corner. You can either have a zigzag wall like that, or you can have a curve. The feeling is quite different. The sense of mystery that you walk across is quite different. Then you look at a house, right? And this is abbreviated version of how I see the house. You can see there's a different component with roof, and then you have a wall, and then you have a floor, right? Or can we look at it like a curve that it creates a very ambiguous, it's basically an ambiguity between roof, wall, and floor. When does the wall become a floor? When does the floor become a roof, become a wall, and the wall become a roof, right? So these are the things that the sense of containment that I find is very exciting for us to explore. And this example that I'm going to show you is one of my, I think it's a very interesting building to prove, to show my point. This is by Peter Zumthor, the valve, the way of basic, what they call it, thermal valve. In actually, I think if I'm mistaken, this is where it's in Switzerland. The place I think is called Valves. Actually, it's actually the thermal bath. It is actually a hillside near a village. So this site is very important. The program is supposed to just create a bathhouse, right, for this entire village, and also become a resort for people, to attract people to that village. And then it's partly run by the villager or whatever. Then they can share in with to make a business and then sustain the village in some way. Now this part here, the down below here, if you can see my mouse, is actually the hill. Basically, eat into the hill, and he conceived this as basically carved out from the hill. Right? And then you have one outdoor swimming pool, and then one indoor bath, and then with a lot of this huge chunk of column. But eventually, he still need a bath and all those things, but this what you appear to be like a huge chunk of a column, but inside there is actually housing different type of bath. Right? Then we conceptualize it, and then with the final drawing, it is like that. But basically, it actually inside is cut into something that cut into the hill. So the hill, it contrasts the hill, and yet it's into the hill. You look at the section here; it's very much cut into the hill. But very much when you walk on the hill, you can almost directly walk onto the rooftop of this building. So it is the site that actually definitely contributes to his natural idea, his architectural idea. And also the material that he used a lot of local black stone, so that it tie in with the site in some way, a certain relationship. And he in his lecture, he likes to talk about atmosphere. So what is created is like you go inside a cave, right? And some of us like go into a cave, you notice that the power is that the light that come in is very concentrated, right? So what he did is that even in his detail, it's like you can see the junction here almost non-existent. So again, this is when the idea and the site and the construction or the enclosure come together, right? The choice of material, like it's a local stone, although it mixed with some imported Italian stone, then to create an atmosphere or the idea that he envisaged for this project called Bath, right? Then back to our Malaysia. Oh, that's very fast, right? We go back to Malaysia. In our equatorial consideration, a lot of the time is actually, to me, is the site orientation of the building. Like this is Pura Tanjung Sabtu by my late client now, Colonel Moran. But he was one of my clients. Like you see the way the structural work or the enclosure work, a lot of the time you notice that actually the eave have to go up very, very far so that it shades our sun. Because our sun, like you look at this sun chart, it's actually center there, and then all of you know how to read this. The center there is like 6 months. Like now, Australia is nearing winter, so our sun is slightly inclined towards the south. Towards the north, right? And when it's summer in December, the sun will be on the south, right? So our sun essentially come from all angles, depend on different part of the year. It's not just tropic. Tropic sometimes just northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere, but ours is very unique. Then, to me, most important, that precedent and tradition is very important. Like it gives us clue that how we should look at our own architecture, right? And I just have this small passage up here that it's written by a Chinese scholar back in 718 AD, thousands of years ago, right? But it's very interesting. Here we are talking about minimalists and all that. He is probably the beginning of the minimalist. His passage has been translated into Japan long ago, right? Basically, he is a scholar that has been demoted by the emperor and then sent very far away, and he had to create a hut for himself. And then he said, "I put my door to the north side and let the cool breeze so as to fend off the oppressive heat, made the southern rafter high to emit the sunlight in case there should be times and severe cold, and the beam is trimmed off, left unpainted, right? It's very raw, right? Almost brutalist, right? Huh? And it was plastered and not given a final coat of white, right? But what it means is that he's probably very poor then, that he have to go for the basic. But what it shows is that why he lifted, how he oriented the hut is actually by respecting where he is, right? Because in China, the sun only comes from the north, right? But he's rafter on the southern side because that's how he captured the breeze. So, but he said he must have the sunlight to emit from the north, right? So that it shows. Or my point is that when you get the idea or what have you, these are the facts that we cannot ignore as an architect. And this is a student that I have the privilege to mentor in UM 2018, and last year we went to Singapore and invited to Singapore together to see how he win the award for Asia, but he win the impact one or something like that, right? But he's basically selected as the best. But I was mentoring 7 students, he's one of them, and his scheme is actually in Sipitang, right? And then it's a dying charcoal industry that people tend to look at it as this is master thesis, that as environmentally not friendly next to a mangrove swamp, so in a very sensitive area, right? And what I find that this one is very interesting is because he identified the program, the program, and then he created the thesis for this, right? And he appreciate the revival rather than having a big development that just wipe out all this existing industry. And then he see the possibility of like, they create some charcoal water or whatever that can repel mosquito or whatever with Japanese technology or what have you. So, and then he would harvest, or he would maintain the mangrove swamp in a way that he can harvest them and yet maintaining them, right? So it's a very interesting, and I have I have some knowledge of this, but I don't have as in-depth knowledge after his thesis. So when you have a program like that, and you're not only collecting data, but when you have to actually go into the detail of it. And he also realized in mangrove swamp you cannot build too high. They have to build low. And then you also have to adopt a very passive approach. So he create like almost like a totally open space and what have you. So when I met him from day one, and then I saw that the program that he came out is so good. And eventually I only give him a hard time when he's actually veer off from his own original idea. So when actually if you ever meet me as your critic or whatever, I would always interested in knowing your idea, not my idea. This is your program. You are the architect, right? And you make sure you got an idea. If not, it will be free for all. Everyone will criticize you from left and right. So the beginning, you want to search for your idea. You have a very, very strong program that you are really, really have a feel for it. Really feel strongly for it. And in this case, you want to revive a dying industry that people would have just thrown away, right? And then of course his final layout, the input, final, what do you call this thing is passive, a natural water, the water below there, you can capture cool air and cool the whole building using bakau pile and what have you, the mangrove pile. So my point is site, program, and technology. Like here is adopt timber instead of steel. Steel would have rusted very fast. And enclosure is very much part and parcel of his idea. Like he would not use steel instead of timber, right? So these 3 things all come together. So they are not like separate out, like he tried to have this single story building and then think about how to build it. No, it encloses, just like the first theme that I'm talking about, right? It is all 3 come together when you really go into the program, really go into the site, and then the enclosure, all this became as the entire idea, as part of the entire idea. And for this is about going to move on to the work that I do. Right? Now, my thesis is I really like Malaysia, love Malaysia in a way that architecture, I'm not to say that patriotic or what, but in the traditional Malay craftsmanship, I always take my hat off to them. And recently, I'm quite saddened by the fact that one of the Kota Duyong's craftsmen has passed on. That used to help a lot of students that go and visit him. But you see, okay, just a quickly before I distracted, right? This measurement that we have new metric handbook that you have to know how measure of a man, eventually how a car, how big a car, how the car turn and all whatever. But in the traditional Malay way of looking at when they're building, they actually use a human body, right? As like satu jengkal, 9 inches, actually like that. Satu hasta is between here and here. Right? So when you sit and when you do, and just now I show you the picture there, you see the change of platform, it becomes a place where you sit, right? So, and then how they make things, the equipment, everything, you almost can sense when the building is completed. It is, you can see the human touch. And it is actually dwell into a very basic idea of what technology is supposed to mean. If you look at technology, now we're looking at like technology as if something like, for example, like IKEA furniture, how much wood you can cut from a tree to make as many IKEA furniture as you want, right? But in actual word, technique meaning to reveal the potential of material. And for a craftsman, when they look at a tree, they will see that how best we use that tree just to come up with the furniture, not so much to have and then in fact the old Malay tradition, they used to have this process of sourcing a different type of tree to be cut down and not indiscriminately cutting down the tree, right? And then the other thing that tie in with the word of technology is poesis, and it's meaning to bring something into being that never existed before. Like from a tree, how do you imagine from a tree that you get a very nice piece of furniture that that is that you'll be using for life, right? Like now it's different, like like I also watched Dr. Zach's lecture. I noticed that with the circular, so-called the circular economy, right? You want things to last. So if you're right way of looking at technology, you should get that. You should get that. Try and make it. All right, just very quickly, my house, right? So again, it's the genesis. I look at the land there on this one part is actually a hill that, but I'm not talking about so much of the interior of it, but the making of it, the enclosure of it, and how it is built. Like for example, I actually love the idea of tiang seri, but my tiang seri is different. It's right in the middle of my garden, right? But it's a genesis point, the point at the beginning of the house, the anchor the house, right? And then it becomes, I see living as just a major shelter, a big roof, umbrella roof, where life can happen underneath. A lot of my wall are basically no window, no glass. It's just screen that allows air to move right through. And when it grow up, like what I said earlier in the diagram there, to unwind, that one aspect of us, we like to be out in the open. The other part is that we like to be having a space that really we feel protected. So the heaviness of material like brick, and this brick is about 20 minutes from my place, an old wooden kiln that I got it from, but now unfortunately closed down. And then the material that I choose to be timber, right? And then I use resak, lesser than 𝐶𝐚𝐽, but some part like my tiang seri is 𝐶𝐚𝐽, and how it put together, like then I pay homage to the Malay craftsmanship, how it worked, not so much the tongue and groove or whatever, but the fact that every piece of timber that I put there is exposed. There's no ceiling to cover that. Right? And I use technology as well. Like for example, all this is about nearly 18, 20 years ago, right? AutoCAD, so that I know exactly to tell how much is the wood that I need to use. So also save a lot of money. Right? And this is the process as when it's built. And I use a bit more expensive roof. It's called zinc titanium. And then how the brick is made is only a common brick. The brick itself is less important, less expensive than the workmanship. But this is where I would say is more probably on the last part, where the enclosure, that I find the making of it is very essential. That it becomes part and parcel and contribute to the entire building. And then like the staircase, because like what I said, I see it as just a roof, right? As an umbrella. And then down below, I don't want any, like for example, you can see these stairs here. Vertically, the screen, so this screen, air move right through 24/7. Even the stairs is open in a way, although some young lady very scared to walk up there. But anyway, the air will move right through from bottom to top because basic secondary school physics, hot air rises, so it creates a natural air movement within the house. And then this is some craftsmanship. And then this is my tiangsri. And this is what you look at it at night. Now the next house is more, I would say, the site. And when the site actually almost tell me what to do. This is in country at Damansara. It's on a steep slope. And this is very unusual for practicing architect, that the client come to me and then select the site with me. Right? And then I have some flat site I didn't choose. I choose the high site. When we walk the site, I noticed the aspect of it is quite superb. So how the site actually tell me what to do. Like for example, this ground floor plan actually is the second level is actually very high up. It's almost like a 3-story building up before I can have my flat plateau, right? So you will park the car at the bottom and then you build into the hill a little bit, right? And then what I excavate the stone, I use back at the front, and later on I'm going to show you. And again, this is the site that actually contributed a lot to the idea itself. Because the first curve, for example, that what you see here is the first platform that I have, the shape of it. So I just complete the curve in a nutshell. So when you are when you go up to the top, is a series of decks that from the inside can relate to the outside. And then the back of the hill is basically, I conceive that then when we survey the site, we are not just surveying the site. We have to look into the sense of containment that the site produces. At the back, it already have a high wall, the hill, and then already have the tree. We keep the tree because it's already formed like a back green wall at the back, right? So what I do is that when you go up there, nobody going to look in. So I would want the entire ground floor, but it's actually on the 3rd floor high already, totally open. And then when you go into the bedroom on the 1st floor, it each have its different prospect. And then on the right-hand side, the wing, the short wing that becomes the house, the staircase, and the lift to go up to the ground floor, the first floor, is that it becomes the wing that was sort of like give privacy to the central deck. So whatever the neighbor built is not going to infringe into the central living outdoor activity. Because to me, outdoor living is very important, and it's very much part of the culture of Malaysia. Right. This is a section they're taking across. Car come in, the 1st floor deck is actually there, and second deck is below, 1st floor deck is up there, and then the living hall. Then technology-wise, enclosure. Then of course it ties in with the worker that we have. Like in Malaysia, we don't have like a very industrialized worker, but we work with the worker that to me, the important thing is that those are workers that are actually very passionate about their work. So I have to come out with the size, the exact size of the building, because they are not really highly educated as such, but they are very good carpenters. So because it's a 3-dimensional curve, so I have to come out with a field drawing just to tell them exactly, and then they only realize that it's actually a curve like this when they sambung the entire. If I go through one previous one, you can see that I create this drawing that at every 4 feet I tell them how high the central ridge is, and so when they connected it, then only they realize it's a 3-dimensional curve. So this is some process picture. So on the inside, you see it like that, and when you contrast with the concrete work on the inside, when it's completed, it sort of fit into the landscape, and they look a bit like an organic animal. They're looking like a tortoise that look right through, right, with a shell, into the larger context, the view. And the other aspect of the material that we choose, like with architecture, is actually span across time. So the type of material we choose are very important. This is 2010, about 10 years ago. And 2 years back when I went there, end of the 2 years back, it sort of like aged very nicely. You can see the tree has grown, right? So the material that we choose, like we see too many, that in town, that actually they painted it all sort of color, but it sort of like doesn't wear very well. Whereas you have a natural material like our 𝐂𝐚, it sort of ages quite gracefully, and then it tells you its age, right? And the next one, I think this one I focus on more of a program that I was talking about. Like this family, they love outdoor living. And then they have neighbor here and neighbor there, and then facing the golf course. So they want, I create again a very central space. This is flat land, pretty much flat, that would relate them to the central area. And then the owner usually have his makan over here. And then the children, as the children grow bigger, rather than have one chunk of building, you actually spread out different wing for the, like 2 different bedroom here, master bedroom here. So they know of each other, their sense of intimacy, because they can view through the context to see each other, and yet they don't like, be too close to each other. And facing the road, I create a study deck, so that the idea was that down below, I don't allow people to look in, but on the outside, at least you can sit there and participate in the world outside, the street outside. So on the 3rd floor, basically, it's almost like a group of pavilion. It's experienced like a group of pavilion rather than one big building. Right? So in section, basically, you can see here is that the central volume, and even vertically, I create some gap in between to allow air to move right through to encourage the ventilation. And this is a detail of how I do it. I create a very tall glass to allow air to move right through. Again, this tectonic or the technology that I use, I go away from the standard, concrete column, concrete slab, brick infill, right? So I've chosen a very light structure. I still have my slab, except most part of it is actually built of this a custom-made column, right? So the idea was create certain lightness, and then to achieve the type of spaces that I want to achieve. So this is when it's completed, right? A very tall opening, right, on the left-hand side, full height. And when it is closed, the lower also you can open. And when you have a tall space, what it means is that you actually create a lot of movement of air within the building. And on the outside, you can also walk directly outside very gracefully. And then, this is where he usually have his breakfast. And then from the outside in, the shade, the sun and sunlight, create a very cozy, a very mellow outdoor environment. I'm getting way out of time. Okay. And the tectonic of it also is that I want to have a screen outside, right? The building to screen off the privacy, and yet I want people to look out. That is the front part where I say where the study is. And then when you talk about technology, the way of making, as an architect, is very fulfilling. Like I work with a very good worker, for example, and then I want to create this mock-up, then they will create for you. And then when you talk about screen, rather than accepting either vertical or horizontal, why can't we have both, So I create like a series of pieces of timber off-cut from the side. But end up we spend a lot of workmanship because a lot of work to make it. So when it's completed, it looks like that from the outside. It gives privacy for people staying inside, looking outside. So on the inside is quite different. It's quite transparent. You can look out. And it's on the outside of the building, so it filters off sunlight and heat at the same time. So it's this sort of things is where the enclosure that you want to create is become very clear. Then the detail of it is when you work out the type of detail that you want. So when, let's say you are 3rd year or even in your final year, when you are creating the technical section that you must produce, make it work for you. So you can use it when you graduated from your course, So like what I'm showing you is my thesis. It's my architectural section. And so also what I'm trying to comfort you is that what you are learning and what your teacher asks you to do don't go to waste. It's a beginning. And if you don't look at it like something that you have to do, but something you want to do, I think you'll get much more fulfillment out of it. Right? And the second last project, very quickly, is this side. This one is probably, I want to tell you 2 things. It's the thing about working and the thing about thinking, right? And this building, the client used to tell his friend and his father even that I'm a very difficult architect because I don't listen to him, right? And then I keep changing on site. Crazy, right? Architect change on site. Normally, architect very scared when the client change on site, right? And this is the client very scared the architect change on site. Now I tell you why. because it got such a beautiful land right next to a Bukit Raja, the reserve. And then when I walk up to the first floor, suddenly I see one of the rooms actually can look at the lake, very nice lake outside, right? One of the rooms, right? So I tell you about that idea later. But basically, when I have a land like that, and then it's the end, right at the edge of the forest, I want to create a central courtyard that, or at least green enough to tie in, at least in the room, you can see the foliage from the inside of the room, and you can tie in with the foliage from the outdoor, what you call the forest right next to it. Again, this clue is given to me by the site, right? This is what I want from day one, but I don't know yet the program, what I'm going to do. So I got 4 children, all quite grown up, and some in fact just got married. I was invited to the wedding early this year. Like, I already planned for that, so that they can no longer just have a room. Just imagine they have children, they bring the children back. The daughter got married, right? Then at least they will have their own private space that they can work. When later on, I'll explain this. But in a nutshell, it's a curve. And if you know about a bit of this Chinese architecture, a lot of times you see where the curve, the Hakka, they call the Earth Tower, right, or the Tulo, right? But no, this is not the intention there. But basically, I want to create a curve, but part of the curve is basically, because you have a basically good view from all over. But I don't want him to just see the view just everywhere. I want to frame that. So in the road, I want it to look very heavy, look very forbidding, so people don't look in. But on the other end, I want it to be very open. Again, this is what the first program that I show you. One end, we want to be very open. The other end, we want to be very, very protected. That's the, like we have claustrophobia and agoraphobia, right? There's the two things. You cannot be too open, you cannot be too close. But so this one, what I do is essentially on the what do you call, on the western end, I would want the place to be more solid. And on the left, when you go into these edges here, that you roughly see only a few columns here, to be very open, because here practically nobody really sees it. And then you can relate to the forest, and then create an internal garden, and also the very huge pool that basically create an internal garden. So the idea was that the central garden will become a buffer. At the same time, you also allow one place, one like his gym and his space here can look right across to the other side of the building. So you don't have to use handphone to call each other, they can see each other, right? Through a screen of trees or something like that. So this is first floor. When all the room, later on I explain a little bit about what this is. And then you have one side is higher than the other. So the one that is lower, I make it into a space where you can go down and park his car, so it doesn't, the front facade is kept pretty much empty. And then the roof is very challenging. This is where, instead of a tin house, I use timber, they will cut on site. Here it's actually, I use a BIM, right? Building Information Modeling. And here also, I feel a bit hurt on the inside because I don't see the workers so much. I only see crane, because all these are prefab and then they go to the site and piece it together. And this is something for younger architects like all of you, like going to be an architect, to think about. And the method of production now, I think it'll be more and more prefabricated, especially after the COVID scare. Everything will go for automation. And make sure we architect, we don't end up part of the automation and don't need architects. But no. Design-oriented architects, we always have a place, I believe, right? So the section is like, okay, just briefly is that you have central courtyard right at the center, right? So this is where they piece together, right? The technology, again, I use steel and I use random column to support the flat slab. Again, the tectonic or the technology of this, I break away from the normal, like you have a very thick, what do you call, concrete beam, right? You see this is only a 200 slab sitting on the steel, right? So it creates a different type of space underneath, right? And this is the likeness that I'm going to show you a bit later. So again, all this is about program, and the site that tell you what the clue that they give to you, whether you pick it up or not, right? And then also lastly is your passion about how things are going to be made, right? And this is outside, look very heavy here. Closer a bit, it's like overhang, where the gas come in, no fan, right? So what I said just now, the daughter got married, right? And then they got a loft inside here. But basically, you see all this shaded area. Basically, this is, I call it the iconic box. I had to go through a lot of argument, a lot of insistence to tell him that he said, "Now look, I already got glass here enough already, ma. Can see the forest very nice, ma." So I said, "No, it's because when you can see everything, the view becomes very cheap, you know." I said, "You need to create a box to frame it, so you can sleep in the box and view it through the frame." Just like, you know, the power of the view and power of the light. Sometimes it comes from the fact that you limit it. You don't give so much, right? So that's what I mean. Is that then I came out with a lot of detailed sketches. I encourage you all to do sketch, but you still should love your technology that you all have at hand now. Because with sketches, sometimes you make mistakes and things like that, give rise to some other idea. Now, it doesn't build according 100% according to this, but this is what I issue to the site. And they have to follow in the sense that they understand, and then they, you know, and then this is go through a lot of smudging here and there. That is a very hard birth for this particular, I call it the iconic chair that I created. Right? So when it's done, it's like that. So you see, just imagine if this is whole view or this view is more powerful. Just look at the view that I framed for you. And then actually beyond it, later on actually you see the lake beyond it. Right? And how big, this is a very big box. I sit inside it, right? So I can experience it myself. And then this becomes the favorite place for all the family. I mean, the family, the children that are inside the room within the room almost. So again, this is like on the outside, it looks like something jutting out, right? So it's like a tree house. So other thing is like the penetration. I create a very tall penetration. Again, this is a self-imposing idea about enclosure. I don't like frame, so I want it to be when it's open. I want to see minimum of timber door frame, right? And when it is done, and on top there, you know, it curves and it actually becomes the space that links directly from the inside to the outside. And this is the openness on the other end that I was telling you, totally open. And what you experience here is more of the third dimension, the ceiling, rather than the very physically very small column that's supporting it. And this is from the view from the living area there. And then the last few slides will be on my last building that I did for a chocolate factory, right? Now, this chocolate factory actually is an existing factory, but basically I gutted the whole thing up and do something else in between. It came about when I visited this client because he saw my design on the net, he liked certain ideas, so he got me. So when the client comes to you that way, he trusts your design skill, and of course, he never discuss with you too much about your fee because they see value, right? So it is because I see a lot of children there. They have to sit outside to wait. There are buses that come in to see these are young children, maybe primary, even kindergarten, and generally actually from the Klang Valley area, right? And then they sit on the floor just outside, very uncomfortable. And then the owner also, my client also feel very bad if they keep doing like that. So for me, my real client is the one that actually, you know, they are small boys. To me, those are my priority. It reminds me of when I'm small. Like when you bring me to something, I'll be very curious. And then you look at the teacher trying to control them. It's very funny. Adik-adik, semua duduk diam-diam ya, whatever. Then the children being children, they will divert left and right, which is normal. This is what children do, right? So how do you deal with it? So to me, I want to create a very large, comfortable area. This part here, because the chocolate factory has to be aircon for a great part of it. So we create a very large space. And then I don't want it to be dark or artificial lit, right? And then one mistake probably I make is actually I open more on the top, right? But because we worry about aircon cost or whatever, so I just create 3 slits from the top to allow light to come through, but they find some different as well. So it is basically a guided tour. Guided tour is a simple area in a mezzanine area, but basically bottom there, I create a very large area so they can practically sit on the floor and then very comfortable, sit down, and then they are like now apparently the reception is the buses of school children are too many now, very many, but they have plenty of area that they can do. So I have to create activity for them. Then I show you later what I do. So this is what happened, right? So these are a group of students. Then I create even the staircase. I make sure that it's very close together, less than 100 mm, so that you cannot put your head across. but it's still transparent. They can see. If some children, they go to hide somewhere, they can't hide really. You can see so the teacher can easily retrieve whatever lost student that they have, and then they can have fun, all the children there. So I use, having it open, I still have to screen the sunlight. So what I do, I create, and then this is not a house that people like to invest too much. So I use DRC, the existing mesh, 2 layers, and then use our local cheaper wood, which is Meranti, to act as a sunscreen. So the effect was quite interesting, right? It looked like sunlight on the wall. It looked like chocolate boxes, So, but that's accidental. Then this is like when the slit on the top, you see, I can imagine I was like this little boy there, and you're a bit bored, you will play with that, like 𝐻𝐾𝐚 on the floor, make some shadow play. And then I create all these perforated wall at the back there. So that while this group are waiting, other group can actually peeping through, The actual tour is on top, but they can already take a peek glimpses of what's happening downstairs, right? So I create a lot of like a stepping area, and I create curve so that they cannot jump the place for too long, have to let other people have their turn. So a lot of these things, and to me, it's always all this architectural detail or whatever, it comes from the fact that when you imagine a little bit. And for me, this is for me to pretend that I was very young, right? So in a nutshell, this is my last slide, but pretty much this is what I see, the fulfillment that you can get as an architect. Like I practiced for 23, 24 years, and then I've been in the business for so long. I never regret. And then I don't think other architects probably will feel the same way. It's a sense of fulfillment. Unlike a doctor, right? You make a mistake, you cut the wrong way, you bury your client right now. And then as an architect, you make a lousy architect, you be very, very careful, because you'll be stand testimony for years to come. You don't want to drive past it, So we are the reverse from the doctor. But then if you do a project that's actually successful, people come and enjoy it and things like that. The sense of fulfillment in our profession, I don't think it can be replaced by anyone. And then bring back to what you're all doing. I think in your final thesis and things like that, put a lot of work into it. And just now I already talked to 𝐻𝐲𝐸, how you can streamline, what do you call, making a stream. Some of you all like to talk to 𝐻𝐲𝐸 about what we talk about, like the idea. We might start something like that. Now I'm quite happy to help out. Right? So the next slide is this building, as you never show, but what I'm trying to tell you is that if you're interested, I have actually write all this down in about 3 pages. I'm going to put it in my blog that you all can download. But I think they'll be probably on the 10th of May. And to contemplate on the idea, and then you all have to comment, please do. Right? So with that, I'm running way out of time. So I leave it to you all. Back to MC, Lindsay.
Yeah. So, hi guys. Thank you so much, Architect Wooi Lok Kuang. It was really amazing to see how you develop your design from enclosure, programs, vision, view framing, and also the lightweight structure. I also love that how you do your sketches and you incorporate them into your design. So hi everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed it and gained many insights from the presentation. So we got some question for you from the audience.
Sure.
Question is from Nasmi. He's asking that, do you design a house floor by floor, or you envision the whole house and then you decide how many floor and what space to put in each floor?
That is a very good question, right? I think if you refer to the 3 components, right? Like program, to me, is very important for you to question it, be very critical. Sometimes I tell the student, maybe we are not clear enough, is that you have to expand on the brick. Just like what I'm telling you, if the client comes to you and say, I want a 3-story house, then you have to be very careful. And then I want 3 bedrooms on the first floor, whatever. You have to start questioning their thinking process. To me, the way to get to it is actually you interview them, the brief, right? Like also then you also tie in with the site. And then there's one house that I love very much, but I didn't show here. is that the land is such that one is higher than the other, right? So there's no first floor, second floor differences, right? So it's like 1.5 floor or whatever. And then again, why sleeping room? Room meaning it have 4-wall enclosure. But you see, a lot of the time actually it's better not to have wall at all, right? But of course, when it rains, you make sure you have a right shade, and then it's very too much of a rain, you must have a louver. So what I would say that I never think about floor level. Never. I never accept at face value what they tell me. And then they would say, I tell you a joke, right? When I was working in Sydney, there's one Hong Kong client, but my company is actually an Australian company. And then this guy came in, he said, then this boss of mine get on very well with me, and then jokingly tell me, he said, Lok, we have this Hong Kong client, he's looking for a house with 2 doors and subterranean. Subterranean, that means below ground, right? And then with 2 doors. What is that house? But when I talk to the client, what it means is you want a Tudor style, Tudor, Tudor style, right? And then with subterranean, it didn't mean subterranean, it means Mediterranean. Now the joke going to tell you is that when the client come with a fixed concept, sometimes they also don't know what they're talking about. So if they say, I like Mediterranean style, maybe it's because they like the patio, because the high volume, maybe the heat, and then or they say colonial style, right? Because of the height, maybe, because it's very cooling, maybe. So you have to expand on it, question them. So that's where the program comes in. The program is that where it shouldn't be like something given. It's something that you should take it, and then you should start to challenge it and develop a new one from it. Right? So I like first floor, for example, just now the last floor I forgot to say, right? Why that iconic chair, right? So almost we want to build. I actually wanted everything just to have a glass wall. When I go up there, and then suddenly I realized something go amiss. When you have too much of something, you lost the focus. Maybe this is a bit like, look at our COVID, right? That make us stay at home, right? Now how much you would pay to come and see your friend have a coffee, right? So you have too much of that, too much already. So this COVID-19 is quite good in the sense you have to sit down and reflect. You have to start to re-examine those things that you take for granted. Now, designing floor by floor or what those things, right? Okay, you think about that. But it's just that these are too much of that that's going on among architects. Like we accept too readily, right? I would interview them like what they do 9 o'clock until at night. Of course, what they do outside, I'm not interested. I normally interview the wife differently from the husband, and then the daughter, the children, even the 6-year-old son, as long as they are very outspoken. And then I don't want the parents to be present, right? Because I tell them very simple. You have trust in me is that, of course, I also tell the children uncle cannot give you everything, right? But I can tell your father what you want. And then like I have this Dato client, like very successful, very rich. Then you say, oh, don't worry about the kitchen. Don't have to interview my wife. I give him a very expensive blended kitchen. She would be happy. So I said, I talk until he tired. I say, give me 5 minutes. I talk to Tati. And then I keep at it until otherwise I don't want to design. So until I talk to the Tati. It's a very simple lady. She just want one kitchen only, not the dry and wet kitchen. And then she loved the kitchen that I designed for him. Save the Dato that want to spend $500,000. We spend about maybe 100,000, right? But the short of the story is that we have to care. Once the focus is on people's activity, what people doing in there, set your imagination there. Then the shape, what floor, what room, that will come naturally. And then you will be interested that you will think differently as well. If you care enough and love enough to find out what people do, right? And like, for example, hospital, for example, now you like to visit people in hospital, even though the lobby look like a hotel or whatever, like people playing piano or over service a client. Very scary experience, isn't it? Of course, these are different human events. So once you start to question those things, so when we start to question those human events, how the existing one doesn't do the best they can. That's why your thesis is the program. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, we also have another question from Yi. She was asking that how thick of the shading wall required to prevent rainwater to get indoors, to get into the indoor space. If
what
Yeah,
But
no
walk,
second
brick
layer of.
walk, brick walk.
She was asking that how thick for the shading wall required to prevent the rainwater to get into the indoor space if there's no second layer of the glass panel in your design.
How big? Sorry, I didn't get it. The shading.
Yeah, the shading wall,
The roof, you
the
mean,
facade.
the roof. I don't get the question. Is he refer to some particular building that I showed earlier?
Yeah, I think she referred to the building that you have a beautiful facade with, but after the facade, you have a glass panel. Then only the indoor spaces.
Actually, inside there is not a glass panel. It's actually a glass louver, right? And then the you see there's practically no eave. No eave. I think it means shading space. It means the eave. That means if this is the wall, the roof that come out. This is the eave. You know, this is the eave. This is the eave. Now, the eave space there is very little because the screening is done by the screen, right? So I think the water doesn't come in at all because you detail it, and then when the glass louver is shut, there's no way the water coming.
Okay, I hope your answer answers EJ's question. We have another question from Fabius. She's asking that, can you define about how do you generate a big idea and good solid concept when you start a project?
I think she missed the entire lecture then. That's why I say that you generate a strong concept. It's to me, it's two main things, but with the third thing is part and parcel of that, right? Two main things is the program and the site, right? And like, for example, you want to have a very strong idea. It's actually like what I said. Like, for example, it should be have a sense of controversy about it. That people will question you. That is a very one characteristic, right? But you say, oh, my thesis is to build a condominium. That's no longer a thesis. Everyone building condominium already, right? So a strong idea, like for example, apart from Louis one is very controversial because it's a charcoal thing. Charcoal industry is normally say polluting and things like that, right? So how do you do that, right? You go into area that people, like when they looking on the surface, it look like it's a wrong thing to do. But actually when you go in depth, not to say you prove them wrong, but yeah, at the end of the day, you prove them wrong. So the quality of the program or the quality of the idea or line of inquiry into your thesis have to be something substantial. Like for example, now I can tell you it's almost a trend. All the university that I go, it's about co-working space, co-living space. You know, now because the economy is so bad, right? So why like Grab car? You basically share your space in the car. Airbnb, you share a space in your house, right? And then now you also know the younger generation want to afford the house is so difficult. So you must have a multi-generation building, right? Space becomes smaller, and then but this is a reflection of what current issue is, right? But having said that, then you have to like really focus on what actually it means in the co-sharing, right? And always my problem with that was that who own it, right? And then is it just like, you know, like you have many room, everyone have many room, central space is with kitchen, living, everyone share. Who is going to wash it? You wash it or I wash it? And then if some bug broken already, who replace it, right? So all these things, you have to delve into it and say, oh, this is Khazanah or some big corporation that buy over and sub-rented it. Then you also break the space already, right? And then co-working, for example, right? Then you say, oh, this is where I can rent for 3 days. And then they have, instead of a manager, they have a community manager. Knowing that you are a blogger, then they will organize a seminar within those community that are interested for you. And then you only rent for 3 days, not like a traditional office, you have to rent in year for year and then a lot of money, outcome, whatever. All these issues, right? So home into that issue, the difficult one, right? Then you're going to get a very strong idea that you yourself believe in. That's number one. And choose a site, of course, that appropriate to the idea. And surveying the site. Like for example, I have last time one of the students also very, very good, right? He designed a mosque in Bukit Bintang, right? And then his mosque is flat. Then a lot of people question him, right? even the lecturer, I used to fight with the lecturer. Of course, I'm not a Muslim. I'm not smart, not knowledgeable about Islam. But then he showed, later on, he supported his idea by showing the first prophet's mosque. We basically, no wall, no dome. And then the Qibla is only the sword on the ground, right? I still remember that. But what he did was a niche in the garden. But of course, they questioned him about the shaft that, they cannot break the shaft and they pray and things like that. But those details aside, basically what my point is, he picked a very familiar typology called mosque, but he investigated in a very different way. And then he do two parts so that the non-Muslim can come in, and then certain part, the sacred one with a special permission. But I can see that then later on, I don't know, he present his scheme and then get a very good commendation from London or something like that. But my point is that you can pick something very familiar, but looking at it from a very different angle that you genuinely feel that it is something for us to look at, then you select a site that appropriate. I'm talking about master, right? Third year, maybe you don't have the choice so much, right? But having said all this is that you must provide something. That's why I tried to present earlier was that, looking at something familiar in a very new way or very strange way, right? Or looking as very strangely at something very familiar, right? Then you will open up a lot of imagination, right? And when you design a theater, right? You think about box office lah, this and that lah, the projector room lah, whatever standard, right? But if you're looking at it as an event that people come together, and before they go and buy ticket, what do? They probably makan lah, whatever, right? So you start to think, you start to imagine. Then you go to observe in the stadium, how do they behave, how do the crowd behave? Then you will come out with something that we never thought of before. And then that would like set you off if it's really something unusual, right? When you come out to practice.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question. I also read through the mosque case study also. It was really a very amazing design. Also, we have a question from Victor. He mentioned that he's a kind of student who like to design sort of like curvy building. So, but mostly he have no idea on how to construct those roofing system, especially on the curvy building. So he was asking that, is there any idea or guidance from Sir, like especially on the detailed drawings?
Oh, actually the curved building or what have you, okay, there are a few ways of looking at it. To me, like for example, all the curved building that I do, like ridge and things like that, they are still built of straight line, pretty much straight line, because you have to curve a window with glass is very, very expensive, not very practical. I'm not saying that you should worry about it in your thesis, right? You can build whatever because thesis no need money, right? And then you look at, but it shouldn't be your concern anymore. There are so many studies outside. You have to really go into research on Frank Gehry's work. Not necessarily that I like all of them, but I think the Bilbao Museum was very good, right? And then look at Zaha Hadid. Zaha Hadid never designed straight line as far as I know, right? So, but they can preform it, 3D print it, or what have you, right? And last time during my time, right, there was one very famous engineer, a Mexican engineer called Felix Candela, Felix, Candela is Candela. Now, he designed something that we also can see in Malaysia, right? He used a geometry called hyperbolic paraboloid, and it's a mouthful, right? But it basically is a use of straight line, how to do a formwork, and yet the end result is the curve. So what I'm saying is that don't worry about it. You can call me if you want. You can contact me by email, right? I can send him on the right thing. Nowadays, practically you can do everything, but be mindful, right? Because I find that you have to think about why you like to design curve. I know I love curve as well, but when I say I love curve, is when the situation call for it. And recently, I just completed a house in Puteh Heights. It's totally all straight line, and the client actually come to me hoping that he can get some curve from me. He didn't get curve because the building, the site, and the program doesn't not appropriate if I use curve. So when you say you like geometry become a form that you like to do, you have to to really think deeper about that as well. Then maybe you should more dwell into the idea rather than rather looking into the content like human activity rather than the shape.
Okay, and we have another question from Zeping, asking that how do you come up with this curvy of the building? And is there like any inspiration or reference from the site?
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the thing house first. Just now I tried to explain, right? The first curve is actually almost traced exactly on the contour because the land is sort of like going up and then it plateau. The plateau, I mean, it becomes flat, right? And then the first plateau, that is the curve that's already on site. So the front end of the curve is already there. So I just complete the curve on the back because it's already basically to follow the contour of the site. That if you say the inspiration comes from the site, right? And then the other curve, like the last building. The last building, because it is on a very high elevated land. Even in front, it's almost like a hill, and then right next to a forest. So basically, you got 360 degree of what you call aspect and prospect, right? But it presents a different challenge. If I do all glass just to see all the landscape, will be wrong. But if I do rectilinear, I think it's limiting. But I'm not saying that it's wrong or right, but it's definitely limiting. Whereas like the curve I show you, it turned the building more subtly or more gently rather, right? And then each room would have a different prospect that relate to the forest. So to me, again, that it call for the curve. Right? So again, decision is the architect. So it's inspired by the program or the site, but generally to me, it's the site.
So to sum up, I think it's more like how you respond to the context, site, and how you frame the design. And we
Correct.
another last question from Elaine. She's asking that how will you suggest to students in some initial steps or habit to develop a maturity in architecture design?
I hope some of you will download the text that I'm going to put up. I conclude with that. I conclude that my advice to the student, because you see, architecture, there's a saying, it's an old man, okay, in this case, old woman profession. What it means is that you have to have exposure with life, right? Like what I'm telling you is basically people focus. Like you're focused on event, how people come together, right? Before you design the shape of your building. That will be your consideration there, right? So of course, if you are not married, you cannot empathize, let's say, with a married couple with a young girl or young boy or whatever, right? What do they have to go through? Or someone who is married and divorced, a man or a woman like 𝐒𝐵𝐻𝐿, how is their life is like, right? And then how is like when you design, let's say, a old age care center, how does the old people feel like? The sense of loneliness, despair, and things like that. There's no way, as a young person at the prime of your life, right, to internalize or to understand all that, isn't it? So to me, the most important thing is that I concluded that in my write-up, the 4 things that you need to do. One is that you must read a lot, right? Or go and see a good movie. Read meaning, like for example, you read the novel like Murakami, or like when I was young, when I studied in Australia, we had to read 𝐶𝐶𝐽. You know, 𝐶𝐶𝐽 is a Aborigines girl story. Then you read about the story, you know how the things that they go through. And one day, if I want to design for Aborigine community there, at least I got some idea, right? And then in Malaysia, more close to heart, like now no longer a very well-read novel by Shannon Ahmad. It's called Ranjau Sepanjang Jalan. And we have to read. It is about a very hard life of the farmer up north in Kedah, right? And then what they have gone through. Like for a Chinese boy, although I'm in a kampong or whatever, you couldn't internalize the livelihood that they go through, right? So if I were to design something in kampong and I have read that, I definitely would be better informed of the community that I'm going to design for, right? So reading is very important. Take an interest in what you're doing. If second to it is you must observe a lot, right? Observe. Go to the shopping center, you observe a little bit what people do, how people behave. Or if you want to see the design hospital, go to a hospital and observe how people come and register, and then look at how people wait and things like that. Is that the best place, whatever, whatever. And then third is very important skill to listen. And when you talk to your client, especially, you listen, and then you really take an interest in them. You listen to their needs. What actually like this family wanted to achieve or whatever. What is most important to them, right? And then you then only you will derive your own brief. You expand on the brief. And then lastly is to have a sense of empathy. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is like now you are COVID, you don't have food to eat, and then I say, oh, I sympathize with you, right? But now I can say I empathize with you because I'm also in the COVID also, right? Let's say I don't have enough to eat, and then it's just like a good example is like in the rain, right? Sympathy is just like, oh, you just in there, you just say, I'm so sorry. And then look at him with the umbrella outside in the rain, right? To empathize, I mean, you also carry umbrella, you go outside in the rain together with him. Then you know what the other guy been through. So these four skill or these four habits you cultivate through life, meaning you somehow you will enjoy or you will really live your life basically, right? And that to me is a skill that you have. So if you don't have the span of age, the benefit of an age of perspective, like myself now, let's say, only if there are people older than me, definitely they'll have a different perspective. It's through reading, right? Through all those four habits that I'm talking about.
I do agree that for the four habit, reading, observing, listening, empathy, it's more like how we go for the understanding of the site and the design in a more sensible way. So I think that's all for our online lecture today. So thank you everyone for joining us for our today's online lecture, and we hope that you enjoy it. Keep in
I
touch.
enjoyed very much. Hopefully all of them enjoy it.
So we hope that we can keep in touch. Do get update from our Masa Instagram and Facebook for our next lecture series. Until then, have a nice day and we'll catch up with you next time. We are glad to have you with us. Bye-bye. Thank you. You can feel free to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, CC. So I'll leave now. Bye bye to all
Thank
of
you,
you.
sir.